Welcome to Season 4 of the Changing Earth podcast with Sara F. Hathaway, blending survival fiction and fact to bring you entertaining education that will help you dream, survive, and thrive. And now, here's your host, Sara F. Hathaway.
Hello and welcome back to the Changing Earth podcast. This is episode number 128, Season 4, Episode 4. Well, a little bit of bad news on my audiobook front. I have to go through and make some corrections. I got pointed out for a few things, so that probably will not be done till after, this podcast comes out after Christmas, but probably I won't have that till the new year. So, working with that, it's a little bit of, you got to go back through every single audio file and edit and do what they want you to do. It gets a little bit complicated, but we'll get there, no worries. And then I'll have those audiobook codes up for grabs. So that'll be a lot of fun once we get there. Last week in Battle for the South, Master Sergeant Bennett was finally caught up to star on the boat. This week, we catch back up with Vince and Erica, and we're going to follow them on their journey south. And it's going to take a lot of human ingenuity to stay underneath the federal forces' radar. So that's what they're going to attempt to do, and we'll just have to see how that works for them. But here to talk to us today about human ingenuity and kind of how it works from a military intelligence standpoint is Samuel J. Culper. He is the founder of Forward Observer and a really, really excellent guy. And I can't wait to share some of the bonuses that I have to offer you later. So really exciting stuff. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into Battle for the South. Chapter 4. The relentless wind ripped at Erica. It shivered through her body as the dinghy bounced through the waves. She focused on the tiny lights on the coastline sparkling on the water as they quietly puttered by in the distance. The going had been painfully slow. Melvin seemed to know where he was headed, but Erica knew he did not want to get too close to the coast. She was unsure how to feel when a larger boat with no lights on came into view out of the darkness. Melvin did not appear to be concerned, and Erica felt he looked relieved. The dinghy was deflated and stored as they boarded the new boat. "A change of boats is brilliant," Erica remarked, impressed, as they boarded the fiberglass fishing boat. "If anyone saw us now, they have the wrong boat description, and she's a much faster vessel," he explained, rubbing his hand across the steering wheel. "Where are we headed, Melvin?" Erica wondered. "Lufkinport in Texas," Melvin replied. His attention never left the dashboard as he used the stars to navigate home. The vessel was small and hard to detect. No lights turned them into shadows. For hours they traveled rapidly across the water, redirecting course here and there to avoid unwanted attention. The constant hum of the motor chopping through the water began to slow as Melvin pulled back on the throttle, decreasing the speed of the boat. "Okay, guys, this is how we're going to do this," Melvin declared. "Do what?" Vince queried. "See those lights way out on the horizon on the left?" Melvin asked, pointing his finger into the blackness. "Yeah," Vince and Erica answered. "That's a line of battleships patrolling the entrance to the Mississippi Sea," Melvin explained. "So how are we going to do this?" Erica wondered, eager to make landfall. Melvin got up and opened a container holding 2 rubber diving suits. "These suits will protect you from the water. Under the boat, in the center, is an area that pops up. There's a shelf for you to conceal yourself in there," he answered. "Are you serious?" Vince gasped. "It works," Melvin encouraged him. Erica stood there, unable to come to terms with what she was about to do. The fact that she was claustrophobic was the least of her concerns. Her past experiences with suits and the toxic sludge didn't go well. Driven to accomplish her mission, she took the suit and began putting it on. Vince looked at her in disbelief. Shrugging at him, she finished fastening the clips. Vince followed her lead. "Once you put your helmets on, I'll open your air supply. You have an hour's worth, but we should be there within 30 minutes, Melvin instructed. Got it, Erica replied, pulling the helmet over her head. Melvin turned her around and clasped the helmet. She heard the air hiss in her ears as he turned on her oxygen supply. Then he did the same for Vince. "I'll bang on the boat 3 times when it's all clear," Melvin told them. Erica gave him a thumbs up and then entered the water from a platform off the back of the boat. Her heart pounding, her mind panicking, she waited for Vince. Soon he was beside her, and when his wild eyes met her, they both calmed down. Diving under the boat, they felt their way along to the indicated chamber underneath. It was little more than a tiny cubby to lie in, but if it got them past the patrols, then it was the best thing in the world. Erica wedged herself into the tiny shelf with Vince squeezed in next to her. Her mind flashed with memories of surviving the Great Quake in a concrete bomb shelter. The horrible images of the bodies in the water haunted her forever. The stifling misery of the suit of cellophane and duct tape she had made to survive the toxic sludge of a lake that filled Sacramento. The pain the suit caused when it melted to her skin. Calm down, she chanted to herself. Vince found her hand in the dark and held it tightly. The water rushed past them as the speed of the boat increased for a time. Then it slowed and stopped. Erica hoped they made it. She heard additional footsteps on the boat. But then they began to move again. Just when Erica thought she couldn't take it anymore, the boat began to slow, and it stopped again. Vince and Erica waited anxiously, listening for the 3 taps to come from above. Finally, they heard it. Erica couldn't leave that cubbyhole fast enough. They rolled back into the water, scrambled to the back of the boat, and climbed aboard. "Nicely done, guys," Melvin announced. "We even got boarded by the mercs. That doesn't usually happen." Erica looked at Vince, struggling to remove the suit. "Bennett," they concluded in unison. They followed the new seaside down a deep canal and docked the boat in a covered boathouse. Vince and Erica had their weapons strapped tightly to their bodies, hidden under loose-fitting jeans and jackets. Erica's nerves tingled, attempting to sense any danger in the area. She missed her team. Usually, Dexter, her eldest son, and Star would be out scouting, and she would be holding Daniel tightly. Now it was just her and Vince. Remembering the last time Vince and Erica had charged off alone to save people they loved brought back some mixed emotions. It was 12 years ago after the Great Quake. They had accomplished their goal and saved a lot of innocent people, but others that were near and dear to them had died. She and Vince got pretty banged up themselves. Erica shook the thoughts of her family out of her head and focused as they exited the wooden boathouse. Entering a bustling street, Vince and Erica let the hoods of their jackets fall down across their faces, shadowing them from wandering eyes. Melvin led them down a thin street to a back alley. The buildings were patchwork remnants of the past, closely packed together. They approached the back door of one of the buildings. Melvin knocked 3 times with a 2-second pause between each knock. The door squeaked open a crack, and Melvin whispered something to the woman inside. The door shut, and Erica could hear locks clicking on the other side. The door cracked just enough for them to enter, one at a time. "And who have you brought off your boat today, Melvin?" the red-haired woman inside asked in an Irish accent. "Who they are doesn't matter. We need hair dye and transport out of the Southern Territory," Melvin explained. "Headed straight to the man, are we? You know my house is at your disposal, Melvin. Derek came through here just yesterday to make sure your route was clear." "Yes, sir, you two must be darn important," the red-haired woman pressed, looking into Vince's eyes. "Jessica, don't pay them no mind," Melvin warned. "Which bathroom?" "The big one upstairs," Jessica answered. Melvin led them up the winding staircase. Running her hand along the railings, Erica noticed they were made of cherry wood. The intricate craftsmanship impressed her. More lavish furnishings continued the upscale ambiance of the place as they entered a large bathroom with Italian tile floors. "This place is really nice," Erica commented to Melvin. "Yeah, Jessica is great. A little nosy, but very trustworthy," Melvin commented. "What color do you want?" Melvin was holding out various hair dye colors. Vince chose blonde and Erica chose red. Why not have some fun with it, she asked herself. The horrible smell of the dye burned their nostrils as they waited for the time required. A hot shower took care of the smell on their hair and their bodies. Melvin said we were going south. I thought we were going straight to Dallas, Vince commented while he tugged at his blonde curls in the mirror. I think it's the safest way, Vince. Remember, Melvin said that southern Texas is still free territory. They provide oil, and the federal government leaves them alone, Erica replied. Really? That's cool. Maybe we should find a place to live there, Vince mused. After all this is done, we may very well have to, Erica commented. There's no way the governing board will let us off twice. We knew that before we left. Erica looked somberly at him. But how could we sit there and do nothing, Vince? Would we have been able to live with the fact that we knew what was coming and we could have saved our loved ones and we didn't? You know I couldn't have, Erica. That's why we're here. But who knows what will happen to us after this, Vince pondered. Whoever does, Vince, Erica mused. Live together, die together, right, baby? Vince teased as he hugged her tightly. I like the red, he commented, kissing her. The blonde is weird, Erica jested. Couldn't agree more, Vince concurred as he flung on his baseball cap. Erica heard a knocking at the door. You two all set? Melvin questioned. We're decent, Erica answered. The door swung open and Melvin was all business. There we go, much better. But I would still pull those hoods down tight. Here, Vince, new hat. Melvin handed him a Dallas Cowboys hat. Are you serious? Vince declared, appalled by the replacement. Get over it, man. You'll blend in much better with that hat around here. The coastal towns of the southern region are being put into lockdown. They're looking for someone with your descriptions. We have to move fast, Melvin explained. Vince shook his head at himself as he looked in the mirror, gazing at the man with blonde hair and a Dallas Cowboys hat. Erica laughed softly at his vanity. Blue looks good on you, she teased. Not as good as purple, Vince smirked. He tucked his Vikings hat into his bag and finished strapping down his gear. Vince watched Erica illuminate as she stepped into the morning sun. You coming? She asked, looking back. Her red hair burst with color from her ponytail, and her brown eyes reflected the sun's new rays. Yeah, I'm coming, Vince replied. Safe in Lufkinport, Texas, Erica and Vince prepare for the next leg of this journey that they're on. You know, it took a lot of ingenuity to get them to the point that they are now. Here to talk to us today about human ingenuity and its application from more of a military intelligence standpoint is Samuel J. Culper. Samuel Culper is a former military intelligence NCO and contract intelligence analyst. He now runs Forward Observer, a threat intelligence services company based in Texas. And let me tell you, Forward Observer really caught my attention when I first saw it. You can find it at forwardobserver.com. They're an intelligence service company specializing in threat intelligence, trend analysis, conflict monitoring, and applied intelligence training. I love how they are just digging into the stories that really affect us. A lot of times when I'm exploring around, or gosh, heaven forbid you watch the daily news, you don't find out anything that's really going on in the world. We watch a lot of the bickering that's going on in Washington, and we don't get to really understand what is going on in the world and how does that really affect us. Plus, they dig right into our local communities and also tell us, what is happening in the local regions of the United States that could also, have some kind of effect on us in the future. Ton of information, and it's really good information. They do a podcast as well, the Forward Observer podcast, and it's a great place to just tune in and get your daily brief of kind of what's been happening in the world. So I can't say enough good things about Forward Observer. They also have an intelligence report that you can subscribe to, and strategic intelligence is one of them that they offer. And this is a weekly report that focuses on domestic and global threats, national security, and community security, with a focus on how these threats can affect your community. So that's really cool. And then the other one that they offer is low intensity conflict. Low intensity conflict is a weekly look at the development of domestic conflict, revolutionary political movements, tribal violence, and other factors that disrupt our civil society. Each Thursday, they bring you the latest news and analysis from the front lines of the culture war and look for ways in which culture is spilling over into violence. Like I said, some really great reports, tons, it's just information packed. You are going to love it. If you're a learner like I am and you love to learn, you want to get your hands on these reports. They're super cool. The other really cool thing that Samuel has going on is he actually has a military intelligence course that you can take. It's called the Area Intelligence Course, and it guides students through building threat intelligence products for their community. It's designed and taught by an intelligence analyst. 7 hours of video lecture, 6 worksheets, and other templates, tools, and information make this course a great option for preparedness groups and security teams. You know, I got to tell you, I've already signed up. I'm stoked to get training. I haven't had any time recently because I have a lot of projects all going at once. But Samuel will be back on the show later on this season. And by the time he is, I'm going to have gone through that course, and I'll be able to share with you how I liked it and what the review is of that. But I've got to tell you, I've already signed up, and I'm stoked. Putting together a mag group is an interesting process in and of itself. And then when you start thinking about all the threats that are going to be present for your mag group, it's going to be a really good idea to have a grip on how you're going to handle that. And this course is aimed directly at that. So that's really why I'm excited to get started. Just for my listeners, if you guys use the coupon code Sara, you get a 10% discount on all 3 of these products. So if you're going to go over there, get signed up, which I highly recommend you do. Very, very good information. Samuel is the real deal. Use your coupon code Sara for a 10% discount. SARA, no H. Remember, I don't have an H. SARA for your 10% discount. So anyway, let's go ahead and welcome Samuel to the show. Today, I have a brand new guest to the Changing Earth podcast. His name is Samuel Culper. Samuel, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. I really appreciate your time.
Oh, of course, Sarah. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Well, I'm honored to have you on the show. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience, and we'll just kind of start there.
Sure. Well, I'm an intelligence analyst by trade. I dropped out of college, enlisted in the military, did that for a number of years, spent 3 years in Iraq and Afghanistan as a soldier and a contractor. And I left the intelligence community in 2012 just because I couldn't do this stuff anymore for the administration and just some really idiotic foreign policy, bad decisions all around. And of course, we were very, very concerned about what that administration was doing domestically. And I said, look, I'm kind of in better service helping my friends and family prepare rather than helping the United States government to prepare. Not that they would listen to me anyway. And so I started this company called Forward Observer, and I've been training people in intelligence gathering, and just teaching them how to observe and gather information so that we can be better prepared. We can have reasonable expectations of the future. I focus on local stuff. We have to know what's 500 meters around our home before we worry about what's happening 5,000 miles from our home. And I've been doing that for several years, and I'm running an intelligence service now. What else do you want to know?
I've been listening to Forward Observer, and I got to tell you, I'm really, really impressed. I love it. Just a few episodes I've been listening to, kind of doing my research on you. I'm really impressed with the show, and it's definitely something I'm going to be following. So listeners out there, go over and check out Forward Observer because it's really informational, and it's stuff we are not getting from our news media at all. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
So today I have you on the show to talk about human ingenuity today. And I know it's not really directly in your wheelhouse, but I appreciate you doing it for me. And we're just going to have a conversation, because these human beings are some crafty people, and they do some interesting things in interesting places, as you probably really well know.
Yeah, in the intelligence community, there are there are lots of examples of human ingenuity.
So what would be like if you had to define, human ingenuity, how would you like define that?
I would say that human ingenuity is the ability to think through processes or to develop systems to one of our favorite phrases in the military: improvise, adapt, and overcome.
Yes.
It's being presented with a problem and being able to identify a solution.
And humans are super good at that.
Yes, high order thinking.
Yep. The big frontal brain gets going, and we can think of all kinds of interesting, crafty solutions for things. So, so I was talking to you a little bit about before the show, just some examples like the tunnels that they do from here, from California to Mexico. I mean, complete with rail systems, lights, air systems. I mean, these people are just so ingenious to be able to come up with this stuff. And so I really drew off that for this part of my book where they're hiding underneath this boat. And, they have submarines now that can be undetectable underneath boats where they're transferring all this cocaine and stuff. So just, really interesting stuff. Do you have any personal stories that you could kind of share on like stuff that you were really impressed with that you're like, wow, that was crafty?
Well, I never spent any time at Southcom, but there are tons of DEA and the Coast Guard are always finding these submarines from the cartels, and they're unmanned. Right. So a lot of times there's no one even piloting them, and they're using drones now. I recall vaguely a story about some people using a drone to deliver drugs over the wall of a prison, so that people on the inside could sell the drugs.
I think I remember that story. Yeah, they actually flew the drone over the wall. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a thing for about 15 minutes. Yeah.
Right. Till they're like,
And on the topic of drones, we look at the Islamic State, what they have done and presumably will continue to do, not specifically the Islamic State, but both conventional and unconventional militaries and forces is weaponizing drones, right? They had these grenades or explosives strapped to these drones, and the drone would just come and land on top of a tank and kill the tank commander. I know they attacked some Iraqi forces and Syrian forces doing that as well. And so this is we always said overseas that we're in a 3D environment, and there's nothing that shows more that we're in a 3D environment than drones attacking you from above. It's actually pretty ingenious.
Well, it is like so much for suicide bombers, right? You don't even need them anymore. You can just fly your drone in.
Yeah, and it's affordable, it's commercially available, and for a couple $100 you could have a very dangerous weapon. And not only that, but it's also rather surgical, right? You think about an IED, and there's some very complex, as far as IEDs go, complex IEDs that we encountered in Iraq and Afghanistan. And those you just sit and wait, and you drive over them, or you have to be there and wait till a truck's driving by to initiate that IED, that roadside bomb. But with these drones, it's active, it's surgical. You can fly in somewhere and really be targeted with your violence.
Right. I saw a cool thing that they had that was like this giant ball, and they were rolling it across to try and find like the old mines and things like that, IEDs, and that it just rolls and it can lose like legs and stuff, but still keep going.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty darn creative. So listening to your show, it was talking about how now the cyber attacks have gone to a place where it used to only be possible to really infiltrate another country's cybernetics you needed a whole state, the technology of a whole country really to be able to make that happen. But now with our new systems that they're able to do that on a much smaller scale. So I was like, well, that's pretty scary. That's human ingenuity at its finest, and that's pretty darn scary right there.
Yeah, it is. I tell you, if there's one trend that we see right now, it's decentralization. We see Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. Well, that's decentralizing a very central financial industry, because you no longer need banks. You don't need clearinghouses. You need a digital wallet on your phone or your computer or wherever. And once we have peer-to-peer exchanges, we don't even need centralized trading exchanges anymore. And so that's one area of decentralization. And then we look at this backlash against globalization and this, international socialism and globalism. And, that's happening right now in Europe and North America. We're trying to, decentralize this centralization of power in a couple of other areas, but also in cyber activity. It's also becoming decentralized. You just said you don't need to be a nation state with $1 billion budget or multi-billion-dollar budget to launch very, very effective cyber attacks, and it's something that an individual can do now. And so, this decentralization in many different areas really is a challenge for us, and probably nowhere is that greater for us than cyber attacks, because we are so vulnerable to cyber attacks. And it's, we go back to human ingenuity, and we have a problem, right? We want to attack the United States. We want to hide who we are, or we want to otherwise obfuscate who we are and what our purpose is. And, viruses are a way to do that. Cyber attacks, of course, can be very, very difficult to pinpoint exactly who that is. And that's a really great example of human ingenuity.
Yeah, thinking outside the box to get around the established rules that are there, And that to me is what really is just impressive about, humans just keep creating, keep thinking, whether that's in a positive way or a negative way, So, that to me, it kind of blows me out of the water. It's just like, wow, who would think of such things, I mean, it's just crazy to think about. And then a story that I remembered from Russia, that they have this system that detected nuclear attacks, and they had upgraded the system, and they got a positive hit that like a nuclear missile was coming their way, One guy had to press the button to decide, like, do we fire back or not? And hesitated, He's like, do I push the button or not? And it came up as a false reading. So it was just like, thank God we have the ability to think in the other direction as well, to really analyze.
Yeah, I think that turned out to be a flock of birds or something that their early warning radar was mistaking for a nuclear an ICBM launched from the United States. And I tell you, if I could just tell you just brief story, as long as we're talking about the Soviet Union, because this also is a great example of human ingenuity. Back in the 1980s, there was a Soviet intelligence analyst, and I don't remember what his name was, but he was interested. He was a counterintelligence agent, and so a counterintelligence analyst. And so his job was to try to find CIA and other Western agents and assets in Soviet Russia. And so he went back through all the files, all the intelligence reporting, all the CI reporting about known or suspected agency assets in Russia. And he built this matrix, and he said, these are the most common indicators of CIA activity as far as these individuals are concerned. So once he had this, index of say 20 or 10 or 20 indicators, he could go through and then surveil, ask for surveillance on a specific individual suspected of CIA activity. And then he could go back and say, okay, which of these 20 indicators is this person exhibiting? If it's only, 5, well, maybe he's not a CIA guy. But if he's 10, 15, 17, he's highly likely working for or with the agency. And so it's essentially a structured analytic technique. But I tell you, that's kind of outside the box for that time, especially.
Right.
Was outside the box thinking, very, very creative, kind of cutting edge in CI analysis at that point.
Yeah, to be able to come up with that checklist to go, okay, now we have a strategy to go, can we detect these people, instead of just kind of dealing with, well, we don't know, what is he doing, So that, yeah, very, very, very smart. So what do you think causes humans to really, to take that next step, to bound up to that next level, to think, outside of that box?
Well, necessity is the mother of invention, and we're confronted with a problem, and especially in these instances where our lives are on the line, or the lives of family members are on the line, life or limb especially, and where we really are forced. And Kyle Lamb is a former Delta Force guy, and he's an instructor here in Texas, of weapons, firearms instructor, tactics instructor, and he always talks about this belief that we will fall back to the level of our training, right? And so and actually he goes a little bit beyond that, but I don't remember the exact quote, so I won't try to paraphrase him. But it's really not that simple. The fact of the matter is that we don't have training, if we don't have practice trying to think outside the box, if we have not been inoculated to stress, then we will simply not make, or we're less likely to make good decisions when it counts. And there's this concept of fight or flight, and
Right.
it's fight, flight, or freeze. And a lot of people do freeze because they've never been – look, humans are very good at solving problems we've solved before in general. The average human being, though, is not very good at solving problems he has never seen before. That's why inventions take so long to create. That's why these next generation concepts take so long to develop, and massive amounts of brain power. And so really, if I had any advice for developing your own ingenuity and practicing now before SHTF, we have to put ourselves in stressful situations. And if we can artificially create stress, that's fantastic. And I think we ought to do that more often in our training, because really, that's when adversity tells you what you're made of. And so if we're not challenging ourselves, then we won't know what we're made of. And also, we're less confident going into a scenario that could be potentially dangerous.
Absolutely. I love that. That's what we're trying to practice. So many people sit there and they talk about the SHTF situation from their nice little comfy home, heated, everything's good, and they're like, oh, I'd do this or that if it really came down to it. Well, have you been out practicing that at all? I mean, it's great that you're thinking through it, but have you actually put that into muscle memory or brain power memory? So I love that take on it. It's an awesome example of how we can start getting better right now. So what kind of scenarios would you suggest that we do, like just going out camping? How can we create that artificial stress?
Well, I'm not a survival expert, but I'm an intelligence expert, and I can tell you a really, really great way to do this is, well, I'll give you an example. Back in 2014, we battle-tracked the Ferguson riots.
Okay.
And we had people from all over the world. A fellow intelligence analyst who's actually stationed in Korea at the time was helping us, and we had a number of volunteers. And all we did was we got on Twitter, and we got on the radio and listened into some ham bands, and we listened into the police scanner there in Ferguson in the St. Louis area. We basically just started data mining social media and all sorts of other open source intelligence that we could, whatever we could find. And then we plotted these things on a map. And doing something that's real world in real time is going to induce a certain level of stress for you. And the more you get in, if we have all these distractions, that will create, a little less stress because we get a break from it. But if we lock ourselves in a room, your prepper team or your family or your security team or whoever, I would highly recommend during the next riot, during the next event, hurricane, tornado, whatever potential emergency situation there is, sit down with a map of that area and try to collect as much information as you can, plot it on a map as soon as you can. And not only are you going to learn this is actually a real intelligent task, but trying to keep up with the battle rhythm, especially something as fast paced as a riot, is really going to challenge you and test your capabilities to keep up. And I think that's a fantastic way to begin that stress inoculation, especially for intelligence.
That's an awesome idea. I would never, ever have thought about that. Love it. So.
Well, forever's a long time.
Right? Yeah, true. I might have come around there eventually. I'm like thinking more of like go out camping and take all your stuff. Like, but how would you really create the stress? Again, you're just in a nice, comfy environment. You're just, chilling. So makes it a little bit more get your mind just really, really thinking instead of just trying to work those basic necessity skills. Think big level on what you would do. And so that's a great idea to start really getting to know your local area better. And I love that take on Forward Observer, that you guys do really check into like local area. Because I feel the same way. I'm really into wild foraging. So for me, it's like you got to know your local area first, because that's what you're going to be accessing first. And then you have to think, different geographical areas that you might be moving into. So this is kind of the same idea. You'd have to be battle ready for your immediate area, and then you could start thinking about what areas might we be moving into, or external threats that could come from outside of our area.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Really interesting. That just blew my mind. I don't even know where to go now.
Oh.
So, yeah, and we really covered a lot of the pros and cons. I mean, human ingenuity, you can use it for a positive, you can use it for negative. Do you have any more pros and cons you can add into there?
Yeah, I would just say that the enemy gets a vote in a war or conflict. And so our enemy may be more ingenious than we are, or have more ingenuity than we do. And that's an advantage. That's a warfighting advantage, and advantages stack up. And so there's a really great quote. It's one of my favorite quotes. It's from, what's his name? Jack Welch. He used to be the CEO of GE, General Electric. And he said, when change on the outside is happening faster than change on the inside, the end is in sight. And he's talking about running a massive corporation where they have to plan 5, 10, 15 years in advance, right? I mean, they have to be building the refrigerator for 2020 or 2025 or later, or they're going to be left in the dust by their competitors. Right. And that's a quote that certainly applies to us in the preparedness and survival community, is that if we are unable to keep pace with what's happening outside our front door, then there's a good chance we're going to lose. And really, that all comes back to intelligence. It all comes back to information, having an informational advantage, having a step ahead, having some kind of early warning, whether that's 30 seconds or 30 minutes or 30 days. And so that's, intelligence is such a critical part. I mean, let's think about human ingenuity, right? In order to make good decisions, we must be subject matter experts, or we must know a lot about something. And so when we're talking about human ingenuity, we're talking about outside the box thinking, making forward thinking decisions. Well, if we don't understand where we are, or the topic, or the conditions, or the second and third order consequences of our actions or the actions of someone else, then we have these things called intelligence gaps. And intelligence gaps are exploitable. We exploit the intelligence gaps of our adversaries because they don't know what we're doing. We have this element of surprise. And so unless we're able to close those intelligence gaps, really, I think we're at grave risk, no matter how much ingenuity our organization has.
I love it. That is a whole new way of like thinking about your preparedness plan, even, to just get out there and really not just make a map, not just plot your course, but think about all the different variables that could affect you along the way. Because if you have those gaps, that's where you can be exploited and get taken advantage of.
Certainly.
I love it. Well, Samuel, I think we'll just wrap it up there. I mean, that was a great interview on human ingenuity, and it really gives the audience a lot to feed on for a little bit till we have you back for our next episode, and that one's going to be a goodie. So why don't you go ahead and let the audience know where they can find you so that they can start filling in their information gaps.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity, Sarah. My website is forwardobserver.com. We have a watch floor there. And so we post articles of strategic and domestic value there. And then we also, you mentioned the radio show. So we're on Spreaker, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and some other places. And it's just Forward Observer Radio. So, yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Well, thank you for coming on and joining me. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
Alrighty, Samuel, thank you so much for coming on the show. I got to tell you honestly that I kind of browbeat him into doing this human ingenuity interview, even though he was so spectacular at it. he wasn't really sure that he had all the right answers for me. And so I told him, I'm going to push you out of your comfort zone on this one. And I thought it was a great interview. I had a great time with Samuel, getting to know him. And as I said in the middle, I cannot say enough great things about Forward Observer. You got to go over there, check it out. They've got the Strategic Intelligence Report, the Low Intensity Conflict Report, and then also that Area Intelligence course. And I would recommend you check those products out because it's great information, much better than you're going to be getting off of any kind of news that we have going on. And also you can listen to that podcast. It's a great show, just a little briefing. I mean, it's a real quick one, so it's a good stuff. If you use the coupon code Sara, S-A-R-A, you're going to get a 10% discount. So use that coupon code Sara, S-A-R-A, for your 10% discount. So thank you very much for joining me. I hope that you all had a very happy holidays and you're looking forward to a safe and, productive new year, getting everything in line. It's going to be interesting what this year has to throw at us. So make sure that you're going through your preps. It's a great time of year. A lot of us are inside. Make sure you're just taking inventory, doing your rotation, those kinds of things. Great show today. Had a lot of fun. I love this Battle for the South story because it is just so action-packed. So everything just keeps clicking along at a really rapid rate. And that's my favorite kind of book. And then we had Samuel on. We found out about Forward Observer. And if you use Sarah's coupon code, you're going to get that 10% discount. Well, I can't wait to see you again next week. So until next time, remember, dream, survive, thrive.
Thank you for joining Sara for this episode of the Changing Earth podcast. Don't forget to pick up your copy of Day After Disaster, Without Land, The Walls of Freedom, and Battle for the South at www.author.sarafhathaway.com. If you love Sara's books and this podcast, please head over to Amazon or iTunes and let everyone know by leaving a review.